it again. Fulham needed a goal scorer. It seems like they found one.
Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We're here. Fulham played yesterday. Fantastic game, fantastic result, and I think we're all buzzing. But you know what? I could sit here and talk to you all by myself. It would be really boring and probably have no one here. So that's why I need help. So that's why I have with me today, I have Elton. Elton, how are we doing?
Look, I'm very, very well. What a great afternoon, and sitting watching it with Jack. I smashed the coffee table a couple of times, quite late at night, and nearly woke the house up when we scored, and I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Fantastic. And to be honest, even if you do get noise complaints, I think that's a flex. I think, someone comes over, there's a disturbance in this household. What happened? Sessignon just scored an 88th minute goal against his former club who left us for. And they would just been like, cheers, right on. We're out of here. Right. No problems. We're also joined by Mark, who isn't in the UK. He isn't in Asia. He is a jet setter. He is in Amsterdam, of all places. So, Mark, thank you for joining us in Amsterdam.
Well, always happy. Less happy hopping around the world. Would love to just stay in one place, but always happy to be on this show, especially after a win, a big win. So much to talk about, and really keen to sink my teeth into it. So let's get cracking.
That's right. So I think Elton watched it from TV. I mean, did you watch it on TV, or did you not really have a chance to?
Yeah.
I mean, first, Mark, sorry.
No, watched it. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hop in. I didn't watch it on TV, but if you were to join our Discord, which is a fantastic place to talk all things Fulham, meet like-minded, intelligent, handsome men, women, and theys, there could be an option to catch the match in some format. So that's Brilliant. How I may have watched it.
And there you go. I was originally going to go on a tangent of, we'll try and paint a picture for you. But you've just done a fantastic plug for the Discord, so you saved me a job there. But yeah, Discord is popping, by the way. Like, we got 50 or 60 new joins last week, which, the username Plague Doctor, I think that's I feel bad saying thank you to the Plague Doctor, but thank you to whatever your real name is. But for spreading the Fulham Discord word and getting a lot of people in, which is fantastic. I mean, the more that you build in this community, the better. I mean, the discussions are great. I mean, you can start to try and help each other out. So I know there's been a bit of a ticket debacle recently. So, I mean, there are season ticket holders who may not be using their full allocation, therefore offering their services up. Who knows? But that's all in the Fulham Discord, which you can see in the link in our bio. So that's all fine and dandy. Well, with that out of the way, Fulham played Tottenham Hotspur yesterday, I guess, early afternoon, which was quite a nice one. For, I guess, Australia side, stateside, and even for us in the UK, it wasn't that bad to sort of get down there. I mean, the trains were a debacle, but we won't go into that part. That's out of Fulham's hands. But, Elton, I guess we didn't really get your view on sort of the preview into Tottenham Hotspur. Were you quietly confident going into this game that, they're probably 15th, 14th for a reason, and that's something that we should definitely be taking advantage of, right?
Absolutely. I mean, based on form, absolutely. But like so many teams in the Premier League, they've got crazy talented individuals who, in a moment, can hurt you. And we're a real sucker for that kind of thing. We seem to fall foul of it very often. So I'm never overconfident in games like these. But no, I did feel like we had a chance. I'd never have picked 2-0. At the moment, I'm still feeling like we're good for leaking one, and we're not great at keeping clean sheets at all. So I probably wouldn't have gone 2-0. But yeah, I'm very, very, very happy with the result.
Absolutely. I don't think many of us really predicted it. I think I jokingly said about 5-0 or something, just because everyone was so on the fence in the preview pod. But I don't think I really stood by my words with a lot of promise, if I'm honest. So, but I mean, there was a lot of talk, and I know we say this kind of week in, week out, and it's just Marco has a way of playing with our emotions, playing with our sanity, in playing sort of 4 at the back, 5 at the back. We've seen the 5 at the back being quite negative, and Mark, when that team sheet came out and you didn't see Diop's name, God love Diop, he's been a fantastic player for us this season, but just not seeing him on that starting lineup and seeing an actual midfielder come in, how great was it to see Diop out and Willian in?
Yeah, I guess that shows us how much faith Marco has in Willian, that he's willing to start him now. Thought he played a pretty good game. I love the 4 at the back. I think that's where we're most commanding. That's what we're most used to. That's how we play. The extra midfielder definitely helps. And speaking of midfielders, AP, what a match! I know you evangelize, and so we take it with a pinch of salt every time. AP can, I don't know, walk into the room and Skippy will be like, "That was a magnificent, best walk anyone's ever seen." But he worked his socks off. He really did. And not that he doesn't usually, but this time I felt it was made especially clear. And unfortunately, there was just, in my opinion, maybe you guys disagree, so we'll get your take on it next, but there was just such a contrast when I compare him to ESR. ESR, I think maybe it's his body language or how he presents himself, but he just looks like slow, lethargic. Like, I'm not saying he doesn't care, but with AP,
let's predict what Mark was going to say, but I think I know.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of energy from AP.
And I actually think, I suspect he was talking about Andreas Pereira having putting in a shift yesterday. Can we talk about that? Do we want to dive in? Where are we going on this?
Sure.
We've lost Mark. But, let's go back to 4 at the back. Absolutely. I was incredibly happy to see 4 at the back. Sorry, can you hear me, Skip?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. I could hear Mark as well, but no, fine. You can go as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, incredibly happy to see 4 at the back. Let's be honest, that's our sort of go-to. That's where we're most likely to be successful and predictable. Not that it hasn't worked, but to be fair, it's worked on one occasion, and we should have put it away as a random experiment. I loved seeing Willian start. I was kind of surprised. I thought that could be weeks away, if ever. I would have been pretty happy if we used him as a sub all season. I think that would have been perfectly acceptable for kind of where we were and where he is at his career. At this point, I'm taking Willian on a free until he's 50. If he can do that, absolutely remarkable. I thought he was sublime yesterday. I thought he was absolutely silky smooth. He added something really special. He brings out something really special in a number of players. I've banged on about this so much, I'm almost sick of my voice on it. But I really do think he continues to add something special, and I can't get enough of him. And Pereira, he was outstanding yesterday. His work rate was crazy, and he was effective.
And you know what? It's an interesting thing you touched upon, which was, Willian being really classy and just fantastic on the ball. And there was kind of an early sign that I saw, which was Willian was kind of free roam. He was going a bit more central. He was, carrying the ball, picking out these sort of clever passes. And that was actually giving Smith Rowe some space to go onto the left-hand side. And then do his usual kind of cut in. And I was thinking, you know what, this could actually work in Smith Rowe's favour here, because, I find that he gets into a position where he stands on the touchline, he gets on Iwobi's toes, and they just seem to be all muddled up and not effective. And I thought that, Willian's intelligence of giving him that space by drifting in centrally, that could allow him to sort of kick on and really dictate the game. unfortunately wasn't really the case as the game went on. But I saw that quite early on. But it was great to see Willian. You know, he's not the blistering pace master and tricky winger that he used to be vaguely 10 years ago, but he is just so effective. And I mean, Mark, when he picks up the ball, and he just seems to do everything so simple, but yet really effective. Like we were seeing Smith Rowe pick up the ball, pass it back to the defence, and there was groans. But, you know, for me, Willian was probably playing just as equally safe passes and movements, but they were more effective and more positive in my eyes. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. You're right that the pace, definitely isn't there after this many years. But the decision making is spot on. The skill is there, and just everything kind of makes sense and flows nicely. Like you said, he creates space. Very, very intelligent player. And I think he compensates for his lack of pace with that intelligence, right? He can see things, or he can make things happen. He's kind of like playing with the strings in the background, and I think that's really exciting. Probably another piece of the puzzle we need if we dare I say it, make a push towards Europe. Probably not fully there yet, but really good to have him back and to see him start.
Yeah. No, and to be honest, I think it came a game too early. I think I wasn't expecting him to sort of start just yet. I thought he would probably need another couple of weeks, but hey, he showed me, well, he proved me wrong, and he showed that he was definitely ready, and he was up for the challenge. I think, playing against I think it was Jed Spence on the right, so he's a competent fullback. He's a quick player, and he never looked out of place, and he seemed to really fit the team. And I think there was that odd element of question about, are we failed at Olympiacos, therefore they let him go, and that's why we could pick him up. But I mean, there's got to be Olympiacos fans watching on and thinking, where was this Willian when we needed him? Where was this player? And he just seems to fit in Marco's system, whether it's just dumb luck or whether it is that we've just built a squad that fits the qualities that he can show. But Elton, you touched upon Pereira, and I think there probably were a lot of groans, probably even within the That's So Craven group, that Pereira started again with Berger and Smith Rowe, which we've seen as a bit of a failure in recent times. But even from the get-go, he had the fire in his belly, and he seemed to really step up. I mean, was that the best performance that you've seen from Pereira, full stop, or was it probably the best performance you've seen him in the 8? Where did his performance rank for you in those sort of showings?
In terms of energy levels, desire, and sheer work rate, I think he's definitely not had a better game in the 8. That could have been his best game in terms of endeavours anywhere in a Fulham shirt. He's possibly been more effective in previous season at possibly creating more in the 10, but I was definitely one of those who groaned somewhat, thinking that Pereira. I to be honest, I wanted him to start probably in preference to ESR in the 10, and I've just haven't been sold on his role in the 8, and after yesterday, I'm just wondering whether it's less of a capability thing and more of a headspace thing for him. I feel like yesterday somehow he just knuckled down to it and said, "I am needed. We don't have Lukic. I've got a job to do. I'm going to get this done," and he seemed to really commit to all the hard work that had to be done, because he was everywhere and he was aggressive without being silly. I mean, how many fouls? Not many. If you consider the number of hard tackles Lukic puts in, the number of fouls we end up with, just as by way of simple comparison, I thought he was incredibly effective and very, very hardworking, and a real handful for Spurs in midfield. Really, really, really difficult.
And I think that was something which I found quite interesting as well. You talk about the aggression and the sort of the tackling that Lukic does, and Pereira had to kind of imitate and give his own sort of version of. But he didn't pick up a yellow card, which I found quite interesting as well. I don't think there were any yellow cards in the game, but so obviously Lukic on a ban for picking up.
Barely a foul given. Let's be honest.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's letting the game go, and then there's not even watching the bloody game. But but hey. I mean, I guess moving on to the actual game itself and kind of the key points. First half, I mean, there's always going to be a shout. I'm not going to do these in chronological order, but this is the first thing that came to my mind was, a ball in the box from Iwobi, and it looks like Jimenez has a kind of a free run at it, and then out of nowhere he's now on his front. Was that a penalty for you, Mark, did you think?
Thinking back on it now, I'm gonna go full biased Fulham fan and say yes. Why? Because of all the players in our squad, I think Raul's definitely one of the more honest ones, right? I think he will try and head the ball. Like, you can see the two hands on his back, and he completely misses the ball, and then he falls to the ground. Right? I'm sure we have other camera angles so we can actually check if the hands touch the back. But if they did, that's a penalty. I mean, come on. You shoved the player. You didn't try and go for the ball in the box. It's pretty cut and dry, in my opinion. So, yeah, I'd want to check the tape, but I think that's a penalty. What do you guys take? What's your take on it?
I mean,
well,
go on, Elton.
Yeah, look, I guess you didn't have the benefit of the replays. Not that the replay on only one angle showed very much. The problem is that he gets so aerial and appears to simulate quite melodramatically, which is unfortunate because I think if he simply goes over with the force that he's hit with, and just sort of lands on his belly, it probably looks a lot better and in his favour. But back with the sort of, the simple rules of it all, I just don't understand how you can overlook a defender putting two hands in a player's back in the box. That's outrageous. I mean, even if it's not that strong a push, two hands pushing someone, even if it's not a strong push, it doesn't have to be a very aggressive push. All it has to do is move his head. It's not his whole body he's trying to connect with the ball. He's trying to head the ball. All you have to do is move his head a few centimeters, and you've actually you've taken you've created an advantage for yourself as a defender. And I think, I don't like it. I don't think I'm being biased here as a Fulham fan. I don't like it.
Yeah, I think I just flashed up a comment from Steve Reynolds in the chat. Not a pen, slight push, but Raul made a meal of it. I think real time, sitting in the Hammersmith end, so completely opposite end of where it happened, it looked like a penalty to me. But obviously, once you look at the replays, you look at all these different things and all different variables, I don't think it's a penalty, personally. I think that you're quite right that it doesn't take a lot to push someone off balance if they're going for a header. But at the same time, I think when you look at the trajectory of the ball, it doesn't look like he's in the right position for me to actually get this on target. It looks like it's going to either hit the top of his head or go over his head. He doesn't look like he's got in the right position. But then, he's felt the touch in the back and he does make an absolute meal of it and it looks pretty embarrassing. But and that is Raul for me. He does overplay sort of certain things, like certain tackles that may be slightly, not naughty, but not really that much contact being made. But he'll go around holding, having a bit of a scream. So it's kind of like boy who cried wolf a little bit for me. But I mean, look, I think you've seen him given. if he had given that in real time, and this is going to be sort of a quick fire to both of you, if that's been given in real time and then VAR's intervened, would they have seen that as a clear and obvious error to overturn it, Mark?
No. It meets the minimum criteria for a penalty. We can argue whether it's soft or not. And to your point on he wasn't even on target, I think Harry Kane going back to the Euros, he wasn't on target with his shot towards the Dutch goalkeeper, right? So it's not, I think it still went in. Right? My point is, a foul is a foul, irrespective of whether it's a goal-scoring opportunity in the box. So that's where I stand on it. I don't think VAR would have overturned it.
Elton?
Yeah, look, I bet they wouldn't overturn it, but that's another topic for another podcast. Steve makes a comment here that Elton, you'd have a penalty after every corner if that was the way. And I honestly, Steve, I'm intensely frustrated that different rules apply if it's a set piece in the box as it is as might apply in the middle of the park. I think that's crap. I think it lacks balls because obviously the impact is huge if a free kick is given, but it's just rubbish because if you actually gave a free kick for a genuine foul across the board and didn't care what part of the real estate a player was on, I think people would be pretty happy with it, But that's not how the game goes.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? It's when you give one, then you've got to give all of them, and then it's just going to be.
But
that's the point, I think.
But if you set rules around what an infringement is, then you shouldn't care. There shouldn't be some sort of subjective higher threshold for awarding a penalty. If it's an infringement, it's an infringement. And if that means defenders being aggressive in the box, and we end up with 10 penalties in a match, so be it.
Well,
I think you need to do it both ways, though, right? If yeah. If we
I know where you're coming from, Skippy, as a defender.
I was just about to say, as a fullback,
I know where you're coming from.
I'm leaning on him. I'm making it as difficult as he can to get that header on target, and there's a threshold, like you say. But two extended hands is risky. That's really risky. If that was me, I'm probably more, just jumping for the sake of jumping to try and win the header, and that puts them off. But just a slight shoulder in the back, and that normally you get away with. But I think two hands is risky. It's a risky move. But at the same time, I'm an advocate for it's a physical game. People are gonna touch someone. I think touch-tight defending is always seen as something bad as well. You're always grabbing. I was always told, if you can't touch them, you're not close enough. So I'm always sort of like just a little nudge in the back, every here and there. But watching it back, he's not doing that. He's just seen, he's lost him. He's Rolls just then poked, gone for the header ahead of him, and he's just gone almost like a slight touch of just put him off a little bit. But
in almost any code, contact sport code, the single most effective thing you could do, which generally looks like you're just inside the law, to put a player off who's about to execute, whether he's going to kick the ball out of his hands in rugby or Aussie rules, or you're going to try and head the ball and you're in the air, is to give him a nudge. It's the single most effective thing you can do. It really is, and you can kind of, if you're really clever about it, you can get away with it and without it looking aggressive. But it's very, very effective. So they get paid a lot more money than me. They should be able to see through these things.
Well, you'd like to hope so. And then I guess moving on from the whole penalty debacle, because I think we're going to talk about penalty again later on. But first half, Iwobi cuts in from the right, and weirdly actually had a very quiet game for me. So that's probably something just to sort of quickly touch upon. Is there something, Mark, that you see is a real change for Iwobi just by going over from the left to the right? He seems to become a bit ineffective in the last couple of games. Is that something that you think tactically, or just, we all have a bad day at the office and unfortunately that might be just one of those things for Iwobi, even though I think he did grow into the game a little bit, but he had a bit of a quiet start.
Great question. I think he's built up a lot of credit in the bank. Great player for us, right? Now, from my Arsenal buddies who I speak with, their problem with Iwobi is he was always inconsistent. So he has these moments of brilliance, but sometimes he fades out of games. We know he has a cross on him, but I don't know whether it's fatigue or something like that. But just recently, he hasn't quite been himself. But then, our wingers are playing extra games, right? Especially because we have, Traore came back, but we still have Wilson and Nelson out. I think that lack of rotation is really hurting us. Kind of going on a tangent here, but I think a couple of other, I don't know if it was Dave or other members of our Discord who have mentioned it, but I wouldn't mind seeing Iwobi and ESR switch. Well, not really. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I wouldn't mind seeing Iwobi try out the 8 and ESR on the wing. I think that could be an interesting change. We know Marco's quite stubborn, and he seems to be hell-bent on playing certain players a certain way. I guess he does move the pieces around a little bit. But have you guys ever considered that? Do you have any opinions on... It doesn't have to be that particular switch, but players that you think might do a job elsewhere. Maybe Sess on the wing.
And just to add to that, just very quickly before we go to you, Elton, is that in the Fulham Fix interview with Iwobi, he actually saw himself as a centre mid, if anyone caught that. He prefers to be in the centre, so hey, I don't know why we seem to play him out wide, but there you go. But yeah, I mean, Elton, have you got thoughts on that?
Look, if I stand back, I've got to be fair and reasonable and say he's had a cracking couple of years, and his consistency really over a couple of seasons has been outstanding, and he's been a really, really important player in our squad. He's definitely been a little bit off over the last couple of weeks. I can't remember who it was against, but he put a couple of balls out of play, a couple of passes that just went astray, which was really unlike him. I mean, he's a bit unreliable in that last third, having a shot at goal. I never really feel that confident. But in passing the ball around, I do back him. And so you sort of wonder whether it is a fatigue thing or just mentally he's a bit fried. But as Mark correctly pointed out, there's definitely some load on our wingers at the moment. We're desperately short in a pretty shallow squad as it is. I also wonder whether on the left he's missing out on the Robinson effect, where Robinson is very attacking and he actually brings his wingers into the game with giving them a lot of options.
What you were saying is that Cassagna's probably not as athletic and pulls the defence away from Iwobi, therefore doesn't give him enough time. Is that what you said?
Yeah, and he's not that wing back who just has that. He just doesn't have that to his game. He's a different kind of a player. So I think maybe in a more static right hand side, Iwobi suffers a bit.
But I think I get that.
In terms of the switch, I'm still having a lot of problems with ESR, and I know we need to be patient with him. And I thought he was quite good in certain periods yesterday. I thought he did some small good things actually. He did actually participate in just when we won back possession, just laying them off, really simple things, but just laying the ball off and actually allowing us to sort of gain composure, which is neat because it means he's very good in tight areas. And I just want to see more of him doing that. I want to believe that someone like a Willian playing in that sort of style can bring him out and make him feel confident that he can make the little runs, that Willian will find him, And I know that if Harry Wilson was fit and in this in this squad, he'd be getting amongst it as well. And suddenly it changes.
Well, that's a very good segue, because that is the person who I was going to answer to Mark's original question of people that you would try in different positions. And I think I'd like to see Harry Wilson more central. I think he's got the quick feet. He loves to crash the box. I think he's got the work rate that we saw, I think, just before he got injured. I think it was the Tottenham Hotspur away game comes to mind, where Harry Wilson tackled back and he won it, and he just ran the length of the pitch. Unfortunately, it was on his right foot, but it's kind of like he was showing me the qualities of he can tackle, he's got the aggression levels, he's got the legs, he can sprint, he's a quick player when he gets motoring. And what we've seen this season as well is when he gets into the box, he can find those small spaces and get on the end of things, just because of whether that's luck or instinct. I think, if it happens once or twice, then you're thinking it could be luck. But the fact that he was getting on the end of things against Brentford twice, he got on the end of it at Chelsea, I'm starting to think it's instinct. And for me, he's showing really good qualities of could be that kind of shadow striker. Just that number 10 potentially, but when we're more attacking, that if you lump a ball up to Muniz, he's going to knock it down. He's going to find space. And if you're in and around him, Wilson will be absolutely loving it, where he can pick up the ball. And we know he's got a decent long shot on him. Just get it out of your feet, bend something. I think he could be. I would love to see him probably be more effective in centrally. Like when we've seen him come off the bench, we've actually seen him a bit more free roam. He doesn't sort of sit on that right wing the same way that Adama does. He doesn't sit there the way that Iwobi does. He's always looking to get inside and get in that box and take those chances.
Yeah, quite right.
I'd love to see that, and hopefully we do get to see that before the end of the season. I'm not sure how his healing's going, but I mean, he's just always the sort of the first name that comes up as unavailable, but hopefully we'll see him back soon. The only other real chance of the first half that I wanted to talk about was Iwobi coming off the right, clipped the ball in, and I think I'm going to say it was Ben Davies tried to sort of hook it clear, didn't really get it, and the ball falls to Castagna on his kind of left side. Bit strange, but straight to the keeper. I mean, Mark, am I being too harsh where I think he's got to score there?
He's got to test the keeper more, right? And I think he massively underhit it. I guess it's better to have it on target than lash at it, but I think Vicario is a very good keeper. So it needs to be either placed really, really well, like we see later on in the match, or he needs to go for pure power. And he kind of does neither. I think he's caught unawares. He's not expecting to have such a good opportunity. Probably not on his, favorite foot, right? So he does what he can. And this is, I guess, the difference between us and really top-level teams, right? Maybe they're playing not so well, but most of their players are a threat, and they're gonna do a better job than poor Timmy did at that point. So I don't want to rag on him too hard. It's not his, it's unexpected, and it's not his preferred foot, and he's a defender. But at the same time, should be doing a lot better than sort of rolling it to Vicario. Elton, thoughts?
Yeah, look, to be fair to the skills of Tim Castagna, he's actually got a pretty decent left foot. Having said all of that, if that was, I don't know, Bassi, I think he'd just hit that with a lot more force, whatever limb he threw that at. And I think we just have to be realistic. That was a very, very good opportunity, but he's just not a goal threat kind of a fullback, is he? It just isn't. The best we can expect to see of him in that part of the pitch is having made it to the byline and crossing one in, but not really expecting to find himself in the 6-yard box to have a shot. I think he absolutely caught himself unaware. He could have that. A great player would have found a spot in the top left-hand corner, really, because that was on offer. But I like Mark said, I'm not gonna be too hard on him. It would be it.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things, isn't it, where you look at other fullbacks in the league, and like Ola Aina comes to mind, where he's a very, very strong left-footed. He's a right back, but his left foot is quality. So you feel like, oh yeah, he's finding it. I think even Kenny in that position, he finds a corner. I think the way that there's two ways that you attack it, right? If you're a right-footed player, you either hit it with all your might, which Smith Rowe did, I believe, in the second half when a corner came out to him and it trickled over my head, and I sit in row X for context. But also, you take a more composed approach to make sure that you get it on target, and then it looks exactly how Castagna's ended up. So, it's one of those things, unfortunately. But saying that, I think good effort. We could have done better in that position, but hey, it showed really good intent that we were really on the front foot against Spurs, and I don't really think that they had a chance going into the second half or in that first half, and then going into the second half, I think Ange agreed because they brought off Brennan Johnson, who I didn't see the entire half, and Basuma as well, and brought on Son, who has the pedigree of one of the great probably Asian players in Premier League history, but also Bergvall as well, a very young sort of 19-year-old centre mid who I think has actually been a very, very good player for them. So just a word on that, I guess, Elton. how good were the Spurs bench going into this game? They had Son, Bergvall, Maddison on the bench. Easily some players there that could definitely get in and do us a job. Were you starting to think that, they had a bit of a struggle in the first half. They made early changes, which, he had to do. And the quality that was coming off the bench could potentially hurt us. Were you ever in that kind of position where you thought this could, change the game up a bit?
Absolutely. I mean, Son made an immediate impact when he came on. And, I think Ange was not going to hang about. He knew the danger here as the game went on. We were growing into it. We were looking the more likely to score again. And he had to make changes because they barely had an attacking opportunity of note in the first half. So he had to make changes, and I thought with Maddison to come on and with Son coming on, and I thought we could easily run into trouble. If that was Silva, I think he would have actually made those changes much later. But Ange started to make them pretty early. And I think it was obviously he was very carefully trying to manage those players' workloads, some of them coming back from injury. And we could have had a real problem there if those players had absolutely got involved even more than they did. I think we could have had a real problem on our hands.
And I think, Mark, you mentioned sort of the stacked bench as well. And I think, was there someone who really sort of stood out for you who thought they could come on in this game and change it for Spurs and really, really hurt us?
I don't know the Spurs team super well, but I will say I'm pretty glad Van de Ven wasn't on, because when he's been a really, really good signing for them. And I think one random stat was he was the fastest or second fastest sprinter. So I don't know how he beats Adama Traore, but I've seen him crash the box in a couple of their sort of match highlights against other teams, and he just seems to be a player that takes them a step above. Having said that, like you guys mentioned, Son, Maddison, Bergvall, who also did pretty decently. Very glad to see. I think Kulusevski was out because that man is a menace. He is really, really bloody good. Makes stuff happen, fast, tricky, skillful. Very glad we didn't have to play him. But another change, which I think you're right, Ange does make. He made quick substitutions, which were good. But a point Dave raised in our group chat, which I thought was really interesting, and I completely agreed with, was the Romero Maddison switch. Both of us found that bizarre. Just because Romero, I don't really like him. I don't think many people like him who aren't Spurs fans, but he is a very capable defender. And you're taking out that very capable defender in a 50-50 match, not a match that is ultra comfortable for Tottenham, and you're putting on an attacking player who's incredibly skillful, but doesn't add much to the defense. So is that just Ange's style, in you guys' opinion? Is he just all-out attack? Because I thought that was a weird substitution.
Well, I think the thought was that Romero, I thought he was having a very, very good game, actually. He's a very good player. He's a handful. But I think the sense was that he was approaching or at risk of getting another yellow card. And that may have been some of the reasoning behind taking him off. But it's an odd switch. You know, if you took him off, why wouldn't you actually put on another defender? Because I think they, as much as they needed to do something to score a goal or two, that I think that really disheveled their back line. He was the most effective defender they had, and they took him off at a really key moment in the game, and I think that was a suicide substitution, which actually took a huge amount of pressure off us.
Yeah, I'm trying to sort of pinpoint the moment as well, because I think just to touch upon, after the changes, Son was very positive. I think Solanke had a header and a chance over the bar, and Tell had a long shot. But yeah, you're quite right. Like 63rd minute, we brought on Rodrigo Muniz, who anyone who has watched Fulham at least once or twice knows that he is the more physical, the battler against the defence when it sort of compares to him to Raul Jimenez. So what I found really bizarre was we brought on Muniz, and then 5 minutes later, that's when Ange Postecoglou decided to make that change for Maddison.
We've lost Skibby there.
And decide... Have you lost me?
Sorry,
No,
Skibby.
I can hear you.
Can you just repeat? Oh, sorry, it must have been me. Can you just repeat that, Skibby? What did you find bizarre?
I was saying I found it bizarre that, the 63rd minute, we brought on Rodrigo Muniz, who's the more physical of the two, with Raul Jimenez. But then also, 5 minutes later, he took off Romero and put Archie Gray back, who is an 18-year-old centre mid, who is very lightweight. He's not in any way stature going to compete with Muniz's physicalness or with his physique. And that's what I just found straight away. The physicality of Muniz is they would launch a ball up to him, and Gray just didn't want to know at all. And Muniz, I think he won probably 100% of his headers. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like that's what it felt like.
I think you're right.
And that's, for me, that's where the game changed. He decided to put Maddison in, but that's when we started to sort of miss the midfield a little bit, and pump these long balls up to Muniz, and we were just getting these wins and popping it down to Traore and out wide, and we were just running the show from that point. And then it comes to the goal, and I think that's one of the key moments here, is that you saw the defensive mentality of Fulham to win that ball back, and I think it's Odegaard gets the ball on the wide right, or it might have been Tell, and there's no one within 20 to 30 yards of him, down the line or even inside. Solanke and Son were doing their own thing. Maddison was on the wrong side of the pitch, and we just absolutely swarmed him. And I think Willian wins the ball back out to Robinson, and we ping the ball in, really well taken down, and Muniz strikes it home. And that just, for me, just showed, one, how Ange Postecoglou lost the game, was by that substitution straight away. But also, I think it was just fantastic to see Fulham defending in the way that they did, in a really positive manner of, hunting in packs, getting that ball back, and just not giving up the second ball. And I think it was almost like a mentality that Pereira had taken into the game, but there must have been a wider conversation about it, because everyone seemed to have that mentality. And I think Mark, your thoughts on the goal? I mean, it seemed to be like the chance was gone. We seem to do this very similar thing that we've done in recent times, which was too many touches in the box, no one getting that shot away, and then out of nowhere, Muniz just has a swing at it and finds the bottom corner.
Well, I'm tempted to do the BBC Match of the Day analysis, where all I do is rip on the Tottenham defence for 5 minutes and don't mention Fulham once, because I guess the ball just became sentient and rolled itself in. So that's pretty cool. They should do that. Maybe we can do that on the Puma doing the new balls and making sure they're not sentient and Fulham don't win by default. But yes, so great energy, great mentality from our guys to fight for the ball. Maddison, I don't know if it's a lazy leg or it's unfortunate, but the cross comes in and it kind of bounces off of him. Traore is the first to react to it. Love that energy. Gives it to AP, who then sees Muniz, lays it off, and Muniz goes for the placement rather than the power, and it beats Vicario. Having joked about the Match of the Day analysis, I will say that the Tottenham players were statues, though. You watch that whole passage of play, and maybe one of them moves towards Pereira and the other 5 just stand there. So, and this isn't me ragging on the Tottenham defense at all. If anything, what I said in our group chat is we're those guys in the 94th minute. We're the ones where the other team's pushing really hard and we're seeing it out and we're under a bit of pressure, but it's okay because we have 6 players in the box and somehow the opposition has managed to score despite being outnumbered 3-1. But great movement from us, huge passion. Great shot from. It almost felt like it trickled in. It was so slow, but it beats Vicario because it's inch perfect. Loved that goal and loved the multiple celebrations from Muniz.
Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it, where we talk about the trickling in and the scuffing of the ball potentially, but I feel like if he catches that cleanly, it goes straight to the keeper and he doesn't find the corner, which is one of those things. But it was his first goal in the Premier League at home this season, so no qualms against him milking the celebration as much as he can in front of the hammy end. But no, Elton, it was a goal that was coming. I think it was again back down to that change of Romero off. They just didn't look comfortable. I mean, from then on, it just seemed that, you know, there was a lot of chances. There was one which I think that you would have absolutely loved, where I think Pereira wins the ball back sort of deep into Tottenham territory, swings an early ball in to find Muniz. Ball falls to Willian with acres and acres of space. I'm sure you wanted that to nestle in the top corner, didn't you?
I was willing it. I was willing it in slow motion to just tuck inside the post, and of course it never happened. But yeah, I think we were really ascendant at that point. We were all over them, and it looked at that point, and for some time prior to that we looked like the only team who were going to score. We just looked very, very hungry, and I'm a very big fan of Muniz. Not only because he's just a lovable teddy bear, but I just love the energy he brings. And we've talked about this in various other conversations about Fulham lacking a sort of a leader in terms of someone wearing the armband to really G the side up and actually inject some energy and can-do type of energy into a game, particularly late in a game. And I think he does that. He does it by example. Those headers, his aerial ability yesterday was really impressive. And not only was he winning his headers, and I certainly did win 100% of them, his technique of knocking the ball down into the path of players around him is very, very good. He's not just a gym junkie who's actually a very strong guy and tough in the air. He's actually got very high IQ and awareness. And so, you know, with that in mind, I think he brings so much when he comes on. I was saying to Jack, geez, I hope he doesn't only get 15 minutes in this game. It's going to be a crime. And, you know, he got a little bit more than he normally does. I think he might have got about 25 minutes yesterday, plus stoppage time. And I think that's if we're going to play him off the bench, that's a more effective and appropriate amount of time to give Muniz to have an impact on the game. It's just too hard for him to come in because I think if you think about what he does, he comes in, he throws himself about, he gets involved, and I think that energy needs a little bit of time to percolate and sort of spread around the team for him to lift everyone. And so, yeah, I love it when he scores. I'm so happy for him, and I'm actually happy for all of us because I think it lifts everyone.
Mm. And it's now an interesting time because we've now entered the circle of Fulham scoring again. So it's always Raul has a good game and scores. Then he doesn't have a great game and gets subbed off. Muniz gets subbed on and then scores. And then he then starts the next game, doesn't score, but then Raul will come on. He'll then start the next game, Raul, and Raul will score. So we're into that kind of cycle now. So by that logic, that means Muniz starts against Palace. And I mean, we're not do the Palace preview now because we're 2 weeks away. But I mean, for me, he's got to be that starting striker. But and we'll see. But no. So and then interestingly enough, we go back to penalty chat again, back to VAR and all this crap. But so Bergvall gets the inside line on Bassi. Bassi kind of extends, leans into him, but also extends trying to get to win the ball. Doesn't touch the ball. Ball runs out of play. Mark, penalty or no penalty?
I try to pride myself on being fair, and I also think that meets the minimum criteria. It's in the box. Player doesn't get the ball. Player clips the attacking player. And it's not a 50-50, right? He's coming in from basically behind and misses a ball. Like, it's soft. Again, subjective. I would think it's soft, but I would still, and to be fair, I would give that. And I would grumble, but I would accept it if it was given against me.
Elton?
Yeah, I begrudgingly, miserably have to agree. I think I was actually surprised. It was VAR checked, and it was not found to be, kind of a major oversight from the ref, which shocked me. If that was us away at Old Trafford, and we did that, I reckon that's a penalty every time.
I mean, it's back to Defenders Union. Like, I'm what I said earlier was the leaning on. You physical, you make yourself there, and if I'm running side by side with someone, and I've kind of cut across them to lean on them to stop them from getting to the ball, I don't think it's a foul personally. I think it's a soft one. But it's one of those where I think if he does that in the middle of the pitch, ref blows all day long and gives a foul. But in the box, running out of play, I don't think so. And Claire is absolutely spot on in the chat. It wasn't enough to overturn the on-field decision. And it's the same with our penalty shout, which is if the ref has given that foul and given a penalty, the VAR wouldn't overturn it because it wasn't a clear and obvious error. But because he hasn't given it, it's not a clear and obvious error again because it's so subjective, so soft. So I think at the end of the day, it's balanced.
I actually think that's bullshit, just personally, but anyway.
In what part's bullshit? Go on.
Well, because actually he did make an error. I think it's a penalty. He stood on his foot. He's come from behind. He stood on his foot. He's impeded him. I don't want it to be a penalty, but he stamped on his foot.
I don't think I might have to look at this again, but I don't think any studs make contact with the foot. I think it's like the foot goes across his shin, if anything. That's kind of it, isn't it?
Okay, turn it round. Would you actually still be part of the Defenders Union if that was
live and die by the union?
Yeah, if that was Muniz against Muniz or Harry Wilson or someone like that. Running into the box?
I'm a balanced football fan. I would say yes. And I would say that because I always flip it around. That's the exact way of how I deal with these sort of decisions. Of, well, if that was Muniz or whoever running into the box and someone sort of leant on them and tried to win the ball like that, I still think it's too soft. I think there's going to be comings together. There's going to be elements of, because not every physical contact is a foul, in my opinion. There has to be like a real reason. Like if for me, if Bassey's gone across him and clipped his ankles and clearly made contact that he has to go over, I think that's a foul. But the fact that he's shoulder to shoulder, he's kind of leant across him like that and almost like an extension, and that's what sent him over. That's strength for me. That's because Bergvall is a 19-year-old, and let's be honest, we saw Bassey's strength earlier in the game, where Romero, who is one of the top defenders in the Premier League apparently, got absolutely bodied and thrown around like a rag doll by Bassey. Bassey's a strong man. So just the fact of Bassey leaning in and trying to win the ball and trying to stop the player from running in on goal, I don't think that's a foul, personally. But, I mean, I'm open to it. And I think it's the same way, like you say. If that was Wilson, again, when we're talking about these sort of players, when you're running at full pelt, anything can push you off balance, right? Same thing goes for the Jimenez header. So I just think it's not a foul. It's a strong challenge, but it's just not a foul for me.
I'm glad you mentioned Wilson, because just to add some levity to it, we said Raul made a meal. Wilson would absolutely make a meal and then like start shouting at the linesman. That's his thing. It's brilliant. I love it. I'm there for it.
I'll tell you one thing. In the context of the game yesterday, given the number of fouls that Madley overlooked, which I think was annoying because I think we suffered as a result of it. It was fair. I don't think he was favouring any one particular side. He was just letting so much go that, I think just we somehow were on the wrong end of it for much of the game, certainly in the first half. But having said all of that, having taken that approach to refereeing the game, it would have been unfair for him to suddenly get all technical on us and actually award a penalty. There are so many refs in the Premier League that would award that as a penalty, absolutely in real time. But given the way that he approached the game yesterday, it would have been brutal for him to suddenly turn around and go, "Yep, that's a penalty," when he'd given so much, allowed so much to flow all day.
Yeah, Cavada would have found a way to give him a red card as well, because he's just that kind of guy.
And Darren Bond. Never forget Darren Bond. Ipswich.
Darren
the
Bond.
lap. Yeah.
Absolutely.
A strong sneeze is a penalty.
Absolutely. But, so, it wasn't given as a penalty. And, a long ball from Leno, similar to what we were doing most of the game when Muniz was against Archie Gray. But it was overhit. And I remember watching this ball go and Ben Davies look comfortable that it was coming down. And then Sess suddenly piqued an interest in it. And I was going, go on, Sess. Let him know you're there. See what you can do. And I'm going to sit here and say, I did not expect that to go how it went at all when that ball left Leno's boot. That was just an unbelievable grit and determination from Ryan Sessegnon to win that ball. Incredible strength to hold off Ben Davies, who is no schmuck when it comes to defending, right? He has been around the block. He knows how to defend in the Premier League. And to hold him off and finish the way that he did was an absolute fairy tale. I mean, Mark, talk me through your emotions when that ball was sort of falling onto Sess's foot.
This is going to sound ridiculous, but I swear it's true. I had a feeling he was going to show up. We often say it's against his former club. It's AP against United. It's Raul against Wolves. They have something to prove. Sess really has something to prove. He was talked about as England's brightest talent when he was with us, right? Record deal to Tottenham. Poch's signing. Then doesn't get a sniff. has some injuries, didn't really get a chance to prove himself. He really wanted to show up yesterday, and I'm so glad it went the way it did. And Davies was manhandling him like crazy. That was not an easy shot. He was just trying to buy time. I think if another Tottenham player had stepped up and they'd both come at him, then it wouldn't have been a goal. But they sort of let Davies do his thing. He tries to grab Sess. Sess is strong, really strong in that moment. Grit, determination, like he says, get the ball, turn around, and a beautiful shot. Just what you want to see. Straight into the top corner. Loved it. Was so proud of him, so happy for him. He worked his socks off, and once again, gonna put on my tinfoil hat and blame the mainstream media. If that was a top 6 player, if it was a Son, a Salah, a Haaland, they'd just be banging on about that for 3-4 minutes, right? But because it's us, it's what a failure from the Tottenham defense. I mean, come on, guys, give Sess some credit.
Yeah, no, for sure, and
yeah.
I think
it really speaks a lot to. It really speaks a lot to Ryan Sessegnon's attacking instincts, and you know, I think if there was ever any doubt as to where we need to sort of invest our time with Sessegnon, I think hopefully that's put it to bed. That we need to find a way to create opportunities for him to be part of the attacking force at Fulham. He's very, very good. So many players would have stood off and not actually seen the opportunity as the ball came in there. And he actually runs, I don't know how many meters, but maybe 10 or 15 meters to actually make that happen. You could easily just be thinking, he's going to head that back to the keeper. I'm not even going to make I'm going to look across the field and see where my other attackers are. And we're going to line up with the press and we're going to go again. But he actually sees it as an opportunity to actually, put some physical work in and make it difficult for him to control the ball there. And that you've either got that or you haven't. You see a half opportunity that you can get on the ball and have a shot at goal, if not score. So I love that about him. That's what's always been about him. That's what we love about him. I think to myself, God, please let this fall to his left foot, because I don't know that many people would back his right foot under pressure, being scragged with one arm behind his back. So that was a pretty mercurial effort to actually curl that around the keeper and put it in the side netting. What a finish! I mean, there was a lot to do there from the time he arrived for a one-on-one to put that ball in the net. That was some finish, and just a great story. And I guess something we've all been waiting for it to happen at home at the hammy end to win the game. Yeah, stuff that dreams are made of.
Absolutely. And I think the celebration is misinterpreted, because a lot of people I saw were saying, he's not celebrating against his former club. That was a celebration. That was a Cantona moment of the, where
this is where I belong.
Yeah, this is the moment where, Cantona scores that chip. He's got the pop collar and he's looking around like, are you not entertained type. For me, that Sessegnon swagger, that walk was just so good in a way. He looks back and he sort of says, like, I'm the man. This is me. This is my club. And that was better than any celebration, I think, because it wasn't a respect thing. It was you done messed up, not giving me a chance thing. And we're the ones who reap rewards. And it was just massive that, and I think I said this on Twitter, X, depending on what you want to call it, this was the closest I've ever cried at a football game. So I've been to Wembley, I've been to Europa League games, I've been to all of this stuff. I've never really shed a tear or anything like that, but this was close. Because as soon as that ball was dropping and I saw him get interested, I was like, go on, Sess, you can get it. Go on, Sess, just let him know you're there. Just hold the ball up, something like that, for that 1-0 win. And then just to see him battle like he did, plant it like he did into the corner, and then just that swagger over to the... I was ecstatic. Then, the whole stadium was just ringing out of, he's one of our own. And, TC pushes him towards the fans and he's slapping the chest, and that was powerful. That was one of probably my favourite moments of the season since probably the Wilson goals against Brentford. But that is definitely a highlight for me. And I think no one deserves him more than Sess. I think he is a top talent. He's still only, 24, 25? He's still got a lot of his career ahead of him. And it's just nice to see someone who gave me, the best day of my life in terms of Wembley, now coming back into himself and pushing on and back to where he wants to be. He's enjoying his football again, which is great. So it's just a fantastic, fantastic moment. And, a 2-0 win against Spurs. I can't remember many times that we beat Spurs, let alone a league at home. I think it's just amazing. But hey, that's it.
Got a question for you guys. Silva's a very passionate manager, and there are a few things that really get the entire Fulham stadium on its feet and really pumped and going for it. Someone like Ryan Sessegnon doing his thing is one of them. I think Muniz brings it out in us. Shaupalinia brings it out in us. And I just wonder whether this is a bit of a moment that Silva believes that maybe if Sess is finding some form and Sess has got his goal-scoring boots on and he's actually starting to believe, maybe we use him because he gets the crowd going. He gets the home fans going. And I think Silva's very, very conscious of the fact that he doesn't have that 12th man effect like so many other clubs do. And, we're a genteel mob and it takes a lot for us to really get going. We're more fired by emotion than anger at Craven Cottage. And, I wonder if there's something in that.
I don't know. I think he's definitely got to be within a shout of playing now. The cameo against Wolves, the shift that he put in, I think when he came off the bench and had some chances against Brighton. I think now is the time for him to shine. So I can definitely see him coming in. But I don't think Marco is a nostalgic man. He's not one to do it for emotion. He's not one to do it for the fans. He's always going to be a football minded person and wants to win the game. So I think he will always go big and always put out his best team regardless of whether they're a cult hero or not. But I don't know whether, Mark, you have a similar opinion.
I think Marco, he has his favorites, but I think he's pretty stoic about who he picks. And I imagine he has a whole team behind him poring over the data and things like that to see, whether energy levels dropped, passes completed, runs made, things like that. So long as Sess gets the fundamentals right, yes, we all love the goal, right? But I think Marco will look at the entire performance and, how many runs he made, how many crosses he completed, things like that, and then compare that to other wingers at his disposal. And he'll go with the sensible choice, not the emotional one, as much as we love the emotion and the narrative and the story behind it. But, yeah, I think definitely has a place off the bench, is very close to a start, and let's see if he can get there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, looking at the stats, completely dominated the game, possession. We had shots, passes, everything. Just it was a great performance from everyone. And I mean, I'm gonna quickly put this out to sort of really close it up. So obviously we've got 3 points off Champions League. So let's not delve into that too much because we always talk about, is it happening? Is it going to happen? God knows. But we are in a very good position, sitting 8th after a fantastic win. But I think the toughest question to end on for me is Elton. Who was your man of the match?
I actually think for me it was a toss-up between Pereira and Willian. And I'm probably going to go Willian because I think his effort was exceptional. He was incredibly hardworking, did a fantastic job of replacing what we've come to expect from Lukic. But I think in terms of creating opportunities and providing spark, so much intelligence, bringing other players into the game, I'm going to give it to Willian.
Willian. Mark?
Honourable mention first to Bassi, because I think with Anderson sort of tailing off a little bit, we can see Diego's put up. Calvin Bassi had a great performance as well. Completely agree. And him throwing off Romero when Romero is such a thug. And you can tell Romero is like the kind of character that like enjoys being like a pantomime villain, being a thug and stuff like that. Him being physical and getting shoved off is just hilarious. But AP for me. AP for the energy, for the drive. He always works hard, but this time you could just see it. Perhaps because of the contrast of ESR as well, but he really, really worked. And you can tell when he's tired, but he still looks up, gets his head down and sprints back to try and retrieve the ball. Love to see that. And very, very hard to criticize a player, even when they're not playing their best, which he did play very well yesterday, but even when they're not doing everything right, when you see the desire and the hunger and the effort, that's what we ask for as fans.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think for me, it was Pereira. He just, everything he did, there was elements of his game which we've called out on this podcast of why he's not a fit for the number 8 position. There was, always trying to do the Hollywood ball, not doing the basics in people talk about recycling possession. I hate that term, but, back to the defenders and reset. He wasn't doing that before. He would take some shoddy touches and lose the ball in a really crucial area. But yesterday, I just found that he was, like you say, the energy was there. If we had lost the ball, he was one of the first to be tracking back. There was a moment where he was in a leg race with Tell, I believe, for the winger back from Bayern Munich. And, really strong tackle comes in and he's throwing himself into 50-50s, which he did last week as well, which really wasn't in his character. But I love the fact that I'm watching him throw himself into these challenges and get straight back up afterwards. That is leader material. That is someone who you would respect playing with. And you're like, this man is playing for the shirt on his back, or not the name on the back, but the shirt or the badge on the front. But he, for me, was just everywhere and doing everything right. And if we can get him to do that on a weekly basis, then we have a real problem on our hands with Berger and Lukic. And how do we fit them all into this team? Because I just don't feel like, and I mentioned this before, that Smith Rowe has the mentality to come back from being dropped and push on from the bench in a way that Wilson has, in a way that potentially Pereira has. But I think he's got to be protected a little bit and nurtured into, you are the star, come on, you can do this. Whereas I think Pereira and Wilson, for example, are definitely players who, when they're not playing, they're furious. The rage and the emotion is building up inside them that they want to go out and make a point. So I think Pereira yesterday was a man of the match performance, but not only that, that was a leader's performance. That was someone who I could see being a captain in the middle in the future, just from that performance alone, because like I said, that respect was gained yesterday. And yeah, I don't think we will see a better performance in the middle this season, if I'm honest. And if we do, then great, fantastic. But if he can keep that up, quid's in. I loved it. But like Mark said earlier in the episode, he just could walk out on the pitch warming up and I'm like, doesn't he look great in that training kit? Like, isn't he just fantastic? What a man. What a player. So to see him, to allow others to see him in the way that I see him, magic. Love it. Loved it. But that's
Stevie, I enjoyed that sermon. I really enjoyed that. And I'm a Willian fan, but I'm not going to argue with anything you said because I think it was absolutely outstanding, and I loved his performance yesterday. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, there we go. Summed up the game. There was a lot to talk about, though. That was a good one. That was good. But hey, we've got a break now. We've got an international break, which is come at probably the worst time, considering we're off the back of a really good win. But at the same time, a rest for Castagna cannot be overestimated. So, well, hopefully he's not playing for Belgium. That would be fantastic. Can't he just say he's injured or picked up something? But yeah, we'll see. But hey, we got Palace coming up. But we are back for After Dark on Thursday, where it's a bit of a different episode because obviously we've got no game to sort of preview. But we will be still talking all things Fulham, so be sure to tune in for that. But today, Elton, thank you very much for joining me today.
Absolute pleasure. Enjoyed it, guys. And, well, I'm not looking forward to the international break. I never do enjoy them, but maybe we all need a bit of a break, and I don't mind the guys getting some rest, that's for sure, because I think we're almost at breaking point.
The Aussie doesn't like Australian national team. Shocker. Mark, thank you very much for joining today.
Bit of a sly dig there, but yeah, always happy to be here. Always happy to chat all things Fulham. The boys need a break. They need some rest. So hopefully Tete is back quite soon. Maybe we hear some news on Wilson. I'm not sure, but and always excellent to finish on a win. So we're finishing on a high.
Absolutely. And speaking of high, behave yourself in Amsterdam. So everyone in the chat, so thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you very much for your comments. It's always great to have your opinions, obviously, when we're talking about the topics at hand. So thank you very much. And if you're listening on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, try and drop into one of these YouTube ones. They are quite fun when we live stream, so get your point across. If you're sitting there seething with rage, willing to write an email and about the points that we make, feel free to drop into the YouTube and give us some comments real time that we can respond to, because that's fantastic. But guys, thank you very much again. We've been That's So Craven, and as always, come on you whites.